Hello, everyone. Welcome to the SavvyCast. This is Jamie, and I'm so thankful that you're here today, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast. My guest today is someone that I have known for years. She is an absolute angel. She's beautiful inside and out. Hannah Brown Clement. I've known you as Hannah Brown forever, but you're married now, so it's Hannah Clement. Hannah, I want to thank you so much for joining me today on the SavvyCast.
Thank you for having me. So excited.
Okay. Well, Hannah, before we dive into our topic, which I think is going to be very informative, and I think it's going to be a blessing to a lot of people, I'm going to start with my icebreaker question that I ask everyone. What would you choose as your last meal?
The tough one, because I love food. Probably my mom. It's one of our family recipes. Well, I thought it was a family recipe my whole life. Turns out, I think a lot of people have it, but it's called Husband's Delight. Yes. And it's the best casserole dish. And she always did it with dinner rolls and like the Sister Schubert rolls. And then she made homemade green beans from a can, which is shocking. They're so delicious. With Cavenders, bouillon cubes, so simple. And then my grandmother's chocolate chip cake.
I would love for you to share the recipe, and I'll put it in all the recipes. And I will say, those of us who live in Birmingham and know your family, your grandmother is known as probably one of the best cooks in the world. And any recipe that's from your grandmother or your mom, I would love it. Okay. Well, Hannah, first of all, I want to share with everyone that you're an influencer. You are a blogger. You share so many helpful things on your Instagram, which I'll link to all of your information so people can find out more about you. But you also work full-time for your mother's fabulous business, Hannah Kate Clothing. My girls all wore Hannah Kate. It's still going strong. So what are you doing at Hannah Kate? What's your role?
So I came on to the business about 3 years ago. So I really assist my mom in designing all the clothes, and I manage our whole website. I built our website, kind of manage the marketing, Instagram for it. But with it being a small business, many small business owners know this, you just wear a ton of hats. So I really help primarily with online sales, anything to do with our website, marketing, social media, and then assisting my mom in the designing process, and then just everything in between. But I would say those are my main roles.
Well, we'll link to Hannah Kate Clothing as well, because you can purchase online, correct?
Yes, you can on our website, hannahkateclothing.com.
Okay. Well, we'll link to that as well. Okay. Hannah, I, of course, follow you, love all your content. And I just read that you were recently diagnosed with interstitial cystitis. Yes. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes. Interstitial cystitis.
Okay. Your story, you were very open and honest about your journey, which is fairly new to you. And I was so touched. I saw so many other people comment that were very touched at your vulnerability. And I would just like for you to share your story here as much as you feel comfortable. And I guess we could just start at the beginning. How did you get a diagnosis of interstitial cystitis, which is hard to diagnose?
Yes, exactly. So back in December, I started just experiencing kind of normal UTI symptoms, burning, urgency. And it was over the holidays. So of course, it was tricky to get into a doctor. They said I was negative for UTI, and tell me if I shared too much, but negative for UTI. So they still put me on UTI medication, got into an OB, and wrong diagnosis multiple times, 3 times. I was on 3 different antibiotics. And in their defense, no one jumps to interstitial cystitis is the first thing. So it's just a really tricky thing to diagnose. Oh, yeah.
Can I ask you a point? And I'm sorry, there's an echo. So if I interrupted you, you said you had several negative tests for a UTI, but they still put you on 3 different. So you were having repeated UTIs that would test negative. So there was no.
Exactly.
Okay.
At the OB, they said that I had cervicitis, or they just diagnosed different things to help with. My only symptom was burning and urgency. And then they did find that I had an ovarian cyst. So that was all going on. So then basically, once you get on a certain amount of antibiotics, then they kind of say, we have to refer you out to a urologist, because they've kind of done everything they can and they figure this has to be urology related. So at that point, of course, I Google everything a urologist treats and read everything about it. And I read interstitial cystitis, and I said, please God, don't let it be that. Go to the urologist. I love my urologist.
Do you mind my asking? Do you
It was
have a
Dr.
female?
Ruckus.
Okay, that's
Mhm.
mine. I love her.
Oh, she's an angel.
Okay.
So I go to Dr. Ruckus, and she, at that point, the way that you diagnose IC is it's kind of, you rule out everything else. You feel like you have a UTI, but it's all negative. And so the diagnosis is tricky. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, but what she had recommended was doing catheter treatments. I'm a baby, and I said, I'm going to try everything else and I'll come back before committing to catheters.
Can you explain what that would involve? I've never heard of a catheter treatment. Oh, is it
it's called
distillation?
It's the bladder installations. And so in that treatment, they're able to kind of insert solutions up the catheter to see if it maybe, I don't know exactly what they are, to see if it affects your bladder. If it burns it, then they can also do a bladder wash to kind of coat the bladder lining and help with the pain. So it's kind of a twofold thing. They can kind of see, it's kind of a generic diagnosing, I believe, to see if the solutions end up causing a reaction. And then they can also, after that, insert solutions that'll help calm down the pain and, kind of get you out of flare. And they'll do that for 6 weeks straight. You should go twice a week or once a week, whatever the doctor prescribes. So that was her treatment that I said, I'll come back. I'm going to try other things. And so really what happens is they give you a pamphlet about what interstitial cystitis is. And I'm glad they had it, but on there said pelvic floor therapy. And I was like, great, PT, I'm in, if that's the thing. Well, then I learned what pelvic floor therapy was. And I thought, oh Lord, I cannot do that. So I kind of, at this point, since December 6th, and this was in January, I was at about 76 days of excruciating pain, and nothing was helping. So I lived in
your
terrible pain. Nothing would take it away. Advil, I tried Azo, anything, nothing worked. So I pretty much just suffered.
Pain? Was your pain always during urination, or were you having just pain in your pelvis?
It was more dysuria. So it was always after I went to the bathroom. And so what would happen, I just remember waking up in those days thinking, I have about 10 minutes till it starts. And I would go to the bathroom. And right after I went to the bathroom, it was just constant, horrible burning until I went to the bathroom again. And going to the bathroom was the only relief I got when I was like urinating. And then after that, it just started day in and day out. At that point, sometimes I just used ice packs, anything to just help, because nothing was working. So once I got through that, because, I'm thinking this isn't serious. I'm not on the right antibiotic back in December. So once I went to the urologist, I called my mom sobbing, thinking, this is, autoimmune. This is, didn't think this was it. And the funny thing is I've never in my life had a UTI. I've never been diagnosed with one. I've never tested positive. So I've never, ever, ever had a UTI, which was so weird. So at that point, I had an IUD for 2 years, and I thought, okay, Dr. Ruckus said, let's get that out. Let's just see. I think she was being really kind. I was so scared, and we were hoping that the IUD, my body just didn't like it. So I got that out. And I also, all those nurses that I saw constantly, I was a frequent flyer at my OB, and they were so kind and always got me in. So I got that out, and pain went away for 2 days, and then it just came back. So at that point, I asked for a PT referral. I started, and this is really where I get passionate about sharing about IC and just sharing it all. There's really nowhere on the internet I found, if you Google interstitial cystitis, a lot of the results that come up are a urologist website, and it's their traditional bladder installations. Here's what happens. No cure. You got to make huge diet modifications. I mean, that list is long, cutting out coffee, tomatoes, citric, chocolate, caffeine, very overwhelming because you just think, what can I eat? So lo and behold, one weekend I was laying in our guest bedroom miserable. And I thought, how am I going to find someone's real experience? I went on Reddit. I don't even use Reddit. And I found thread after thread after thread of women speaking about exactly what I was going through and that pelvic floor therapy helped with the burning, all this stuff. So I went back to the sheet and I said, okay, I can muster up the courage to do pelvic floor therapy. That sounds better than catheters. So
can you tell us when you say, is there more than one type? Because you said, oh, I don't think I can do that initially. What exactly is it that you are doing in that?
The pelvic floor therapy?
Yes.
So pelvic floor, I thought, I didn't even know physical therapists did this, but pretty much it's not nearly as invasive as the OB, but a lot of it is internal work. So that they're, releasing different pressure points inside your pelvic floor. And so I was just horrified. I mean, I thought, I'm only 27. I think at this point I broke out in hives every time I went to the OB, I don't know a lot of women that love it, or any.
Yeah.
So I thought, how can I do that, for an hour at PT? And I really didn't know what it entailed. And I can go into that. So I thought, if I'm afraid catheters will hurt, and I'm going to try pelvic floor. So when I was in my room reading about Reddit, and I saw the pelvic floor and all these women having positive, their symptoms were going away, the burning was going away, that it could just be pelvic floor dysfunction. I Googled pelvic floor therapy stretches. And at this day, this was 76 days of just miserable pain. It was horrible. I did one of the stretches, and it was like a happy baby. You know how you lay on your back and a baby holds their legs, and pain was gone in that moment.
Immediately the first time you did it?
It didn't, like, while I was stretching, the pain wasn't there. So I would hold the stretch and I thought, you've got to be kidding me. And then I did the different stretches. And so what happens is your pelvic floor relaxes. If it's tense, from what I've learned, I might be saying all this wrong, but, and I don't want to jump ahead to the knowledge I've learned, but all these stretches. And so then of course, once I released the stretch, burning was back. So I thought, I'm going to pelvic floor therapy. If this is a couple stretches I can do. So then at that point I thought, I can do this. I'm a big girl. I can go to pelvic floor therapy, and what I've learned, it is the most sacred space. I go to Thrive Physical Therapy in Cobble Heights. They specialize in pelvic floor therapy. You go in, you have your own room. And then there's also a gym component too. And so one thing that I really learned that, going to pelvic floor therapy, it was there's so many things you could think, oh, I should try this. And it gets really stressful thinking, what avenue am I going to go? But it really served as kind of a guiding point, my PT, to say, hey, try this, try that. And she made the whole process not as stressful, because so many different people have different opinions on IC, whether you're going to treat it more holistically or with Western medicine. And I think both work. Obviously, it's just about the avenue you want to go and how your body reacts. But in pelvic floor therapy, I spent the first 45 minutes giving her the full medical history. And what was so crazy to me is, they were asking so mmany vulnerable questions about everything. I thought, how does this relate? What are your bowel movements like? I'm very inappropriate, but you'd like point to a chart, and I was just cringing. So many different things about, do you have pain? And just different areas of life. Does your tailbone hurt? Have you had a hysterectomy? All these things. And this is the first time someone looked at me and said, I'm going to treat your full body, because instead of, going to so many different specialists, someone for gastroenterologist for your stomach, or someone, a urologist. And so that was also really just calming to me to think, I can go here. She's not just going to treat my bladder. She's not just going to treat this. She's going to treat, which is really why you treat the whole pelvic floor. And so what was so crazy is on that first exam, I remember, you're so covered in the sheet. They really protect your modesty. You're not in stirrups. You're just laying on a bed with a sheet over you. And, it's just so much, not nearly as scary as the OB. And I remember her not even doing an internal exam, but just pressing on the inner side of my leg. And she was able to reproduce the burning pain that I was feeling just by pressing on certain muscles on the outside of my pelvic floor. So almost like the kind of the back of your bottom.
Okay, let me ask you a question. So you're going to Thrive in is she a physical therapist or a doctor or both?
She's
Oh,
a
well, I
physical
know a
therapist.
PT is a doctor. I'm sorry.
Yes. She's
So,
not a doctor at this point, but she was guiding me to other doctors. I should have included
okay.
that. But she specializes, she's an orthopedic and then she specializes in pelvic floor. So in PT, she was just saying, I'm going to treat your whole body,
Mhm.
it's PT of different things. And so then she said, for you to get better, you need a team of doctors, you need a counselor, because a lot of this is stress related. And she was saying, if you go to your gastroenterologist to figure out if there's any swelling or inflammation in other areas, because if you have inflammation in your stomach or anywhere, if something else is going on, bowel movements and everything, inflammation over time these are all, hypothesis, it travel to other areas because no one really knows what causes IC or
Right.
pelvic floor pain. And so, she can only see as much as she can or feel around as much as she can with her hands and, different instruments. But so that's where I went. I did start out going to my gastroenterologist and I did a full stool sample, blood work, everything. And they all came back fine. My vitamin D was super low, which I know is really normal. But I ended up going to a integrative doctor in Trussville that was going to run all these tests, but I couldn't get into her yet. So I went to my gastro. So I really went kind of extreme route of just check me all out. And so then I ended up taking my results to my integrative doctor in Trussville. And so what integrative means is there's the holistic route, which they really rely on natural medicine, everything. And integrative combines both, like normal Western medicine, what is very normal to us. And so they're okay if you take, anxiety medication, which I do. It tells me they're not going to try and just treat it all naturally. So it was a good middle for me. And so she kind of read all of my stuff. And so then we kind of began healing my gut. Again, she was saying, I learned that a lot of people could have leaky gut and that could be leaking into your bladder. She said, it was like, I don't know, and so we did this it was crazy. It was this blood test, $90. And I saw over 90 foods that I could have any sort of reaction to. And that was just cool in general to me. I always thought I was gluten intolerant or dairy affected me. And it was the most random things. And I started drinking. She had put me on this stuff it was like a natural form of fiber. I know that a lot of, I never want to say anything that's good or bad or attach, morale to food, but I've always been told that I should drink some fiber like Metamucil. And over time, she just suggested my integrative doctor that that's not really good to be on, her opinion. And so she put me on something completely natural that's been great, that has licorice root in it. I need to look at all the back of it and all these different natural forms of fiber. I think it's psyllium husk. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Yes.
Yes. And it's all in there.
Okay. Now I want to ask you, and thank you for sharing all this. And I'm going to put all this in the show notes. Every day in Zane's coffee and mine, I put Benefiber. So in her opinion, that's not something you need because it is a probiotic. I'm sorry, prebiotic. She's saying you need one that's more natural than like Benefiber.
Well, I don't know much about the Benefiber. It could be totally fine. It was more that like, I think the Metamucil that you could drink at night, that's for fiber. I've been on it, in the past from my gastroenterologist, that she was like, oh, it's fine. But if you want to go the more integrative route and just drink something more natural, with completely clean ingredients, nothing's added in. That was what I drink at night. But she also put me on a probiotic and certain things. And so I don't know enough to speak into the Benefiber.
Well, I think it's the same as Metamucil. That's why I was asking. I think they're just different drug companies. But so now she put you on a natural one. And then what else were the changes?
So a lot of integrative doctors and holistic doctors want people on a really high dose of vitamin D. And mine's always been super low. I don't really get in the sun. And also, I know a lot of females are low in vitamin D. Mine was like 16. And a lot of other doctors will say or maybe it wasn't 16, but it was in a lower form of the range, but she wants it to be super high. And that also helps with oh, I'm going to butcher it. I should have had my facts right. But something about vitamin D, it just helps even in your gut and in your stomach, all the things. And so I just, I think sometimes you might think, oh, I'm low in vitamin D, but you don't realize the effects that it really could have on your body over time if there's so many other
Mhm.
things going on. And so at that point, I was doing the elimination diet for IC, cut out caffeine, anything spicy, tomato, anything with MSG. I mean, it was a huge list. It was very daunting to think, what can I eat? And at that point, I could tell a significant impact food and coffee had on me. And once I'd cut out coffee, I could tell a difference. And that was really hard because I love my coffee.
So
So
you
kind
could
of
tell
at that,
coffee was affecting you after you added it and put it back.
yes. So caffeine and coffee, the acidity was a huge factor. And that was my last one to cut out. And it was so hard. And then stress is a huge component, which I was running my body into the ground last year. I think looking back, what's really hard is you could have a stressful day, or you could go eat, or I could drink a cup of coffee, and both could send you into a flare. And with IC, it's different for every single patient. I know a lot of illnesses, diseases are too, but that was also what's really tricky, is because one thing doesn't work for every person. It's not every single food or drink affects a lot of people. So you kind of just feel on your own, and you're like, what do I do? And a lot of people go misdiagnosed for years, is what I read. And I think I kind of get this from my mom. I'm a bulldog. And I just thought, I got to figure out what's wrong with me.
Mhm.
And this was the first time I really kind of didn't do what a doctor told me, but I never did the catheters. And I kind of thought, okay, what do I want to do? And I had to really do my own deep research.
Mhm.
And I'd never really done that before. I kind of just did whatever someone told me. And I think at this point I thought, okay, what do I want to do? How do I want to heal it? And it's been amazing, because now I can drink, jumping forward, I can drink coffee. I can drink any foods. It's insane. Like what has
Goodness.
happened.
Okay. So do you consider yourself in remission?
I would say so. And so I went to, I know, again, I'm all over the place, but I was going to pelvic floor twice a week.
Okay.
And I was doing that a lot. I mean, I was going once a week, and I just finally said, hey, can I come twice a week? Let's knock this out. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to get better. I'll do anything. And so I was doing my stretches every morning, those pelvic floor stretches. I was going to pelvic floor twice a week. And what was so interesting at pelvic floor, we probably only did 15 to 20 minutes of internal like exams, basically where she's feeling around in your pelvic floor, which I'll use my fingers like a doctor. And all that they're doing, I mean, it's not all, it's a huge thing. They're just pressing and holding different pressure points that they can feel in your pelvic floor are tight, and releasing those. Another thing that she did is she would dry needle my hips. So a lot of it, it's not even really internal. We worked a lot on massaging like the fascia, I think you say, your muscle, and my
Yeah.
abdomen. And really, she would use some tool that would just, massage it out, use a cupping, and just really loosen all that up in my abs. And then she would even mobilize my bladder. It's like they could just, on your lower stomach, just really grab your bladder and just mobilize it.
Mhm.
Sometimes she'd even press up here on my back, because there's a nerve in your upper back that deals with urgency. And so I could foam roll at home sometimes if it was just nuts to learn how your
Wow.
body's all connected, and how so many different things she was treating. It was my hips, it was my legs, it was everywhere. And so kind of what I learned in pelvic floor therapy from Krista, she's amazing, was when she had I feel like I have a diagram of the pelvic floor. She had like an actual thing she was showing me is, whether you're in stress, and I definitely had a lot of stress in my life. I was overworking myself. Whether you have IC or you don't, if it's just pelvic floor dysfunction, which just means it's not operating how it should, I
Mhm.
believe, your
Mhm.
pelvic floor is going to tense up and tighten around your bladder. So then your bladder is going to reproduce these symptoms, to where, of course, food's going to affect it if it's already irritated and your pelvic floor is so tight around your bladder. So there's so many things you can't just treat the bladder, or you're never going to heal what's going on. And another reason I never moved forward with a cystoscopy was, in research, only 5 to 10% of women actually have the lining of their bladder inflamed with IC. So sometimes it's not even that helpful. And so once I started seeing progress, I thought, if I don't need to go back to the urologist and have those things done, and the treatment would be the same either way, whether I've, I didn't really get an official diagnosis of interstitial cystitis. It's kind of, the diagnosis is you rule out everything else. So whether I have IC and pelvic floor dysfunction, you treat it the same. I mean, if you're going to go this route. And so that's where I really relied on my PT to treat my whole body in PT. And then I relied on my integrative health doctor to treat everything, whether it was blood work, whether it was stomach issues, whether it was IC issues. And so it just was easy to have like 2 places I went instead of going to a gastro, a urologist, OB. And so that was really helpful. And, just figuring out what food triggered me, and even just food that bothered my stomach, I didn't even know. And so I did that from end of January, from February all the way till, and I was meeting with my doctor every 3 months to go over blood work and results and everything. I did that until this summer. And then right now I'm in PT once a month, just kind of as a follow-up. I moved to once a month, or I moved once I got better. My pelvic floor was showing, signs of improvement. We did a lot in the gym too, where we would strengthen my hips or strengthen individual legs and then do ab work. And I did a lot of this at home too. So I was doing strengthening my core, strengthening my hips, and doing single leg lunges, because if your hips and your core isn't strong, then it can't support your pelvic floor. So then when you work out, you're going to use your pelvic floor. It's going to tense up, then tense around your bladder. So it was just crazy how there was so much healing I needed to do. And I didn't really have a strong core anyways. So I've been working on that. And then they told me to go sweat. If you have toxins in your body, just sweat it out. And so I found cycling. At Lifetime, I stumbled in. I go 3 times a week, and I didn't sweat or done that much cardio, and I have so much fun doing it at Lifetime. It's the joy of my week.
I see those classes and I'm so proud of you. I don't think I could last 10 minutes in one of those classes. That is so
I didn't think I could
Hannah.
either.
Oh my goodness.
It's so fun. But I think because Casey makes it so much fun, and the music is just I smile the whole time. And I think just knowing that I'm able to work out and still move my body, I feel like I pray the whole time. I'm just like, Lord, thank you that I can still do this. And a lot of times if I was burning and felt urgency, a lot of times I don't even have to go to the bathroom. And so I would just tell myself months back, I don't have to go, and working out would just help. And it was just good for, obviously, if you're stressed, and just releasing that pressure on my bladder.
You have been doing so now you're at 1 PT per month, pelvic floor PT per month, and you've made all these modifications, but now you're drinking coffee. What about your symptoms and your pain? How long have you been symptom free?
So back maybe even before this summer, maybe May or April, I would sometimes go a few days without pain, and it was amazing. And so and then maybe a couple weeks. Well, then we went to Europe, and once I really eliminated coffee and the food, I could really start to feel, and I also really stepped away from my blog and Instagram, and just not putting so much pressure to create content, which was really hard for me, because I thought, am I going to fall behind? All those things. And so I was really trying to reduce stress and work out more, and just cut out those areas of my life. So once I got to the summer, Sam and I were going to Europe, and London we had planned this trip for so long, and London is such a special place to me. We were going to London and Paris, and they're known for Thai, Indian food, and all the things. So I told Sam, I said, I'm not going to eat or drink anything before our trip, and I'm just going to blow it out of the water on the trip and have all this coffee and enjoy the trip. And so symptoms were getting better, I guess, to follow up. They were not gone. Food would trigger it. And so I know I said this in my blog post, but I'll say it again. I was drinking chai tea and coffee and all the things, and the burning kind of started. And what is so hard about the burning is when I can feel it coming on, it's not just, oh, don't drink coffee for a day or stop. It takes a week to calm down. Once it's coming, it's not gone like it is. And so it's really tricky with IC, is you think you might cheat or drink something, if you really want coffee, a couple of sips, but it's not just going to burn for an hour or two. For me, it would last a week or take days to calm down. So that was really motivating to not drink it.
Okay. So, and there's really nothing other than like AZO or something that
there was something that they had told me to drink, and I think it works for some people. You can take before you eat, or drink something, will flare. But for me, it honestly made my symptoms worse, and AZO never helped. So I don't know why those things didn't work. So that's really why I was like, I got to find something else. I'll do anything they tell me to do. But So we were in Europe, in London, and we were sitting at breakfast eating. I was at a chai tea latte and eating this. And I just really felt like the Holy Spirit was nudging me to pray, and I felt so guilty. I mean, I was thinking in my head, I felt silly saying, "Hey, Sam, can we pray for my bladder?" Not that he made me feel like this, but I mean, I had just done this to myself. I had chosen to drink all these things. So I kind of was like, oh, well, but so I just said, "Sam, can we just pray for my bladder? This is miserable and it's really affecting our trip." And so we did, and it was really sweet. And then I didn't think about it. And 12 hours later, I kind of was like, wait, I'm not burning. What's going on? I mean, I had a full out dance, freaking out. And I thought, okay.
Wow.
And I just remember thinking, if I hadn't prayed and the burning went away, I wouldn't be able to attribute it to God. And just the sweetness of that I felt the prayer, felt the nudge to pray. And then I prayed, because now that moment I can say, what the heck, God, like that was so cool. And so each day that went by, I just held my breath thinking, okay, every day was a bonus day that I didn't feel bad.
Yeah.
And I didn't change anything I was eating or drinking. And I thought, okay, is the food cleaner here? What is it? But I know how my body would react. It would flare and it would take forever to calm down. There's in my head, in human standpoint, there was no way this was going to calm down until I got back, because a flare just would take that long. And it just went away. I mean, we were drinking wine, we were drinking coffee, and didn't change anything. So I thought, okay, the second this plane sees the Statue of Liberty or I land on US soil, symptoms back. And I honestly was just grateful. I was like, okay, thank you for this trip. This was amazing.
Wow.
I got to enjoy this with my husband. We wanted to do this for 2 years. They didn't return. And so I remember coming back and I thought, okay, Sam, can we have coffee together? Our first day back home. And before this, I will say I had found a lot of foods I could start reintroducing and eating again. But I did still have a list I couldn't eat or knew that would flare me, or I was afraid to kind of touch, even with a 10-foot pole. And for about 2 months, so we went beginning of June, I had no symptoms. I was drinking coffee. I mean, I went to my PT and she said, "How are you feeling? I saw you were having a ball in Europe. I saw everything you ate and drank." And I told her, I said, "Krista, I'm not burning. I don't understand it. I fully believe God healed me, or just that this is because I can't explain it." And that's how I just know. And I even felt silly saying that, or even wanting to proclaim that, because I thought, wow, if they come back, then did I misunderstand God, or did I mishear him? And I just thought, I prayed about it for so long and thought, Lord, even if it comes back, I know what you did in that prayer and how much it meant. It was so clear to me, and you made it so clear to me and not to anyone else, so that I would know you were speaking to me. And so my symptoms I can still eat and drink all that. Like, it's been amazing for food to not affect me, especially, my family loves to cook and I love to eat, and I love my coffee. I don't love to sit on the couch. And so coffee is my fuel. But what's been crazy, and so my kind of hypothesis is, at work, this is about, maybe a few in the past few weeks, it's been a really stressful day at work, and we were doing really exciting things. We were making a bunch of sales, which fuels me. So I was kind of in this adrenaline mode, and all of a sudden I felt my pelvic floor, my bladder burning. And I thought, oh no.
Now, when was this?
This is maybe, I'm trying to think, it's August 9th. So this is probably 3.5 weeks ago. I'm trying to think, maybe 3.5, maybe a month ago. So I had like a month and a half of no pain.
From the time God healed you in Europe, and you're back, and you haven't had no pain until 3 weeks ago. Okay. Just wanted
probably about mid-July. Yeah. Okay. Mid to end July. Okay. And I remember thinking, okay. And so one thing at PT, they teach you how to breathe correctly, with your diaphragm breathing, if that's how you say it. Yeah. I didn't realize I was breathing wrong. You're supposed to breathe really slow, which I was going, like, I do everything fast. Yeah. And you're not supposed to engage your core when you retract. It's just supposed to be like you release the breath. And so I would always that was another thing during, the internal work, I would do those breaths, and she could feel my pelvic floor just completely relax, which was just amazing that she could feel that, and how crazy our breath and like breathing can be for our bodies, because it regulates your nervous system. So when I was feeling that 3 weeks ago at work, I thought, okay, people are going to think I'm nuts. I'm going to go sit in the corner and do my breathing. and calm down. I'm in this heightened adrenaline sense, and it went away. And I thought for the first time, how is that breathing working? And so what I started to see is how much stress and being in this high adrenaline state constantly, and I'm sure that affects your cortisol just up, how that affects my body and just how the, stress reacts. And so even now I'll be late somewhere and I can feel the burning coming on. I'll be stressed, in the car trying to get somewhere. So I do feel some symptoms now, but they go away. It's not a flare.
So when they come, you're alleviating those by doing your breathing?
I don't do it perfectly every time. I might think, okay, I need to breathe. Or if, for me, I don't know if anyone can relate, but I have a crazy busy day at work and I feel this adrenaline sense. And I've noticed I have a hard time coming home and winding down, especially because a lot of the time I spend at home after and before work is I work on Instagram or my blog and I share stuff. And so sometimes I think I just started misinterpreting what my body or, my heart was craving.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I got to calm down. But then I would just go to my phone and just get that dopamine hit after dopamine hit. I'd hit the ground running in the morning, not have my quiet time, look at my phone. And that's where I think last year, my body finally just said enough. I was just when this whole thing started.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think now when I feel that coming on, I'm trying to get better at recognizing, okay, I'm burning. My body holds stress in my pelvic floor. So instead of coming home, and even if I need to film a reel, maybe I put my phone up for the night and I go take a bath, or I go on a walk outside, or I go work out. And that is so hard for me because I am not good at sitting still. And so now, just through the healing I've been able to do in my body I still believe the Lord really healed me then. And whether they come back, the symptoms come back, I'm able to recognize because everything else is out of the way of, okay, I need to slow down. I need to rest. I need to go to bed early. I don't need to, me needing to calm down after work is not, I think I'm craving, getting on Instagram and looking at everything. And just, it's like that dopamine hit when actually I'm craving rest. I don't know if that makes sense,
No.
but I think I come home and I'm like, I can just feel so much adrenaline in my head because it's been a great day at work. We've made lots of sales. I've been super busy, instead of coming home and thinking, oh, wow, I'm craving to sit on the couch in silence or go on a walk. I just get on my phone and I just keep that adrenaline pumping instead of ever just resting. And so kind of my hypothesis, and I don't know if I'll ever be right, is that, we had a lot going on in my family. We had a lot going on just navigating life. And I was running myself into the ground. My sweet husband was helping me every weekend go film content. I would put a lot of pressure to do this all in my free time. And I was not working out much. I wasn't taking care of my body. I wasn't, bringing lunch to work. I'd snack on Cheez-Its and I was staying up late and just all this. I just think my body just finally said enough. And the stress this happened. And that's a lot of times what happens with pelvic floor dysfunction or IC. I remember asking my pelvic floor therapist, I thought, does this just happen overnight? And she was explaining to me that she had a client that never had pain during sex. And then all of a sudden she had something really stressful, maybe a divorce in her family. And then next day, and it was just that some women carry stress in their pelvic floor. And then of course, so then they work through it. And so I just didn't know that stress affected life so much, and that how, if we don't take care of it over years and years and years, what this can end up happening. So I don't know if that helps. So basically now I'm just self-care.
Do you see a correlation? Of course, stress is, you're very obviously seeing the correlation between that and breathing.
Yeah.
What were the foods that that if you partake, you're probably going to have the problem?
I even feel sometimes I'm weird. Like I get nervous to share this because I don't want it to be discouraging to other women with IC and pelvic floor, but I don't have any more foods that affect me, which is or coffee or anything, which I truly feel like is a miracle. I don't understand it. And so I share that. And so sometimes I don't know if what I've heard from a lot of women with IC is this will come in seasons, or it could be lifelong. It could come in seasons. So I don't know if looking ahead, there will be seasons that certain things affect my bladder. I don't know if I've just been able to heal my pelvic floor so much, with all the things that it's not constricting around my bladder as much, or if I just had pelvic floor dysfunction and mimics the symptoms of IC,
right?
Which it's really the same. I mean, technically they can't differentiate the difference, or there's no way to diagnose them differently. They can go hand in hand. They can be either or, but they're still going to have the same symptoms.
Mhm.
And if you go the route of pelvic floor PT, they're treated the exact same.
Okay.
So, and sometimes you can't even get 100% diagnosis of IC. And it's really just a process of elimination, which is just so crazy.
Well, I think this is very encouraging. And, I mentioned to you, I have had recurrent UTIs, and I take this regimen of Eucora, do the whole, Dr. Ruckus tell me to do that. But this is very encouraging to me because you have taken a holistic and integrative approach, and you've seen your symptoms basically, and with prayer, you've seen those basically go away for this season.
Yeah.
And you're enjoying things that by the book maybe would be no. So I think that's very encouraging. So would you, just as we wrap this up, because I know you're at work today, what would be your biggest advice to women who are struggling in this area, whether they think they have IC or recurrent bladder issues? What's your biggest advice, the practical?
My biggest takeaway, which is just so crazy because the very thing I was the most nervous about, is pelvic floor therapy. They are so knowledgeable. And honestly, it's just nice to have a companion that understands what you're going through and is so knowledgeable in the area. There's an expert in what you're struggling with, because now I've been able to connect with women that do have IC or have similar symptoms, and that's so encouraging. But in that time where you don't know what to do, I think a lot of people, maybe their first thought isn't pelvic floor therapy, but it has been the number one best thing for me, because then she was just such a way to guide me. If I'd said, oh, I'm not into holistic medicine, I'm not into that. And I know all PTs might not even be into that. She just kind of guided me and said, what kind of doctor do you want to see? I think you should see this doctor. I think you should see this. If your bowel movements look like that, you need to go to gastro. And so that's when I said, well, I'm kind of interested in integrative or holistic medicine, because traditional medicine hasn't worked for me yet. It makes my symptoms worse. And so for me, they really encourage just a whole team of doctors. But pelvic floor therapy is where I've seen just the most amazing results and the fastest. And it was pain-free. Which is a benefit for catheters. I've heard are extremely painful and can, then cause a UTI. So I never tried them, so I can't speak to them, but I do know that they do work for a lot of women. I just was a total weenie and didn't want to try them.
Yeah. As I've told you, I'll just go ahead and say it here. I've had 2 UTIs that led to retention, meaning you cannot urinate, and it's so painful and you get into a panic. Well, both times that I've had this, I had to go to ER, get cathed. And of course you have to leave that until you see the urologist. I went one day and got my hair done and had a dental appointment, and I think had something, I can't remember, wearing a catheter, just hiding it. But don't be afraid. It's not the most pleasant thing, but don't freak out if you ever have to do it. It's, and it's sort of a little point of laughter with my friends who knew. I said, no, a hair appointment can't wait, so
no, definitely not.
Very sad. But okay, well, and I would love to have Krista on to give more input into all of this, because this is simply amazing to me. And I think this has probably inspired so many people, because your approach, I think, is probably unique. I think it's a wise approach, and your results are speaking for themselves. And of course, I know you, and you give all credit to God, everything that has happened good. But how can people, are you continuing to share your thoughts and your journey, whether symptom-free or if anything comes back? Are you going to continue to share that on your Instagram?
Yes. So that was kind of my one thing where I said a lot at the beginning, because I had such a fear of the OB and pelvic floor and just those vulnerable appointments. I remember just crying, and I don't even cry that much, but I cried a lot in this season, saying to Sam, God had the wrong girl for this. Like this, he chose the wrong girl, not that he's choosing or that. There's just a phrase I said. And I just remember thinking, this is my nightmare. And he sat me down and said, Hannah, if you just listed all these things you could have handled, of course, like this is where you're going to grow and God's going to use you. And so later on, I was telling a friend about it, and I just had this thought. I said, okay, but And it was almost like the Holy Spirit, just the words flew out of me. I was like, whoa. I thought, okay, if God needed somebody to speak about IC, very uncomfortable situations, make it funny, share the funny stories, not be afraid to really say anything, then he chose the right girl. I mean, as long as I have, my mom could testify, I'm always getting in trouble for taking jokes too far, saying inappropriate things. I don't have a filter, and I need to get better at tailoring that. But I thought, okay, I don't see many women speaking about it. At least I couldn't find it. I found few, and that was kind of my heart behind it, is just wearing my scars and just having bold faith with it and saying, okay, if no one else is speaking about it, I can speak about it. It doesn't make me that uncomfortable at all, really. And I hope I can be a resource. So kind of my goal is I will continue to share, through seasons of triumph and seasons where it's miserable on my Instagram. I'm trying to get better about also sharing those posts to my blog page. I just hope that maybe on a Google search, someone could come across my page.
What is your page?
I couldn't find it. It's just www.hannahbclement.com.
Okay.
So it's my blog.
Okay. I'm going to put that on. And Hannah, when I started reading that, because I've followed you as long as I've known you were, putting out content. And when I saw that, I thought, just what you said, I thought, I have never seen anyone speak about that. And that is not a diagnosis anyone wants.
Yeah.
Nor are UTI, none of that. And you were speaking so openly and authentically, and you do, because you have a platform already. You've got a lot of followers and you share very valuable content. I mean, I don't know how many things I bought because you showed them.
You're so sweet.
When I still shopped at Target, I got those tennis shoes that
those are the best.
I'm glad I got them before,
And I shop all your links. You are killing it.
Oh, you're precious.
You're so fun to watch.
Well, Hannah, I will let you know, you come back anytime. And if anything transpires that's new and wonderful and great and noteworthy, I would love for you to also share it here. Yeah. And I appreciate you so much. And you are a dear. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. This has been amazing and just such a testament, to the Lord, of being able to share it through your amazing podcast and just praying that it falls on ears who need to hear it. So I can't thank you enough for this opportunity.
Well, thank you. And everyone who wants to find out more about Hannah, everything will be listed in the show notes, her blog, her Instagram, all the things. So go there and check it out. Hannah, thank you, dear. You have a fabulous rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the SavvyCast. If you'll take the time to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes, that would mean so much. As always, thank you for listening and have a blessed day.